Hello everyone, Zadix Squared here, and welcome to Clan Krug. So today I want to continue the builds that I'm doing for GMs with Solar Warlock, more specifically Starfire Protocol Solar Warlock. I'm also running Osteo Striga and a crafted bump in the night that has Demolitionist and Vorpal weapon alongside it. Currently, Osteo Striga is bugged so that if you poison a target and then swap to a weapon with Vorpal weapon, as long as you keep that weapon out, the poison will last indefinitely. This makes it very useful to be able to shoot a target, especially a larger health bar like a major or a boss, then swap to your bump in the night. You can fire off some rockets, or you don't have to, and it'll just consistently do damage. I used this exact glitch last week with Glassway being up as the nightfall to be able to kill both of the bosses from safety. Pairing this together with Starfire Protocol allows you to shoot a target with Osteo Striga to poison it, then swap to your bump in the night to keep the poison going, and then fire a shot, throw a grenade to reload using the Demolitionist, fire another shot, so on and so forth. It functions very similarly to how Witherhoard does on bosses, but since you don't have to ever reproc that poison damage, it allows you to shoot more rockets and throw out more grenades in the same period of time. To make this build function, you really want to run Well of Radiance and Empowering Rift, so that you can actually get grenade energy back from normal kills. Then I'm using Celestial Fire here, but either melee will work. I just prefer Celestial. And you have to use Fusion Nades with Starfire Protocol for that to work. I'm also running Touch of Flame because this makes it so your fusion grenades explode twice, which is incredibly helpful. And Icarus Dash just because I like how it plays. I'm also running Ember of Resolve so that Solar Grenade Final Blows will cure you, which is a heal. Ember of Ashes so that we're applying more Scorch stacks. Ember of Mercy makes it so that when we revive a teammate, you and other allies gain restoration, and picking up a fire sprite grants us restoration. It also gives us 10 resilience, which is very helpful. And then finally, I'm running Ember of Torches, which makes it so our powered melee attacks against combatants makes us and nearby allies radiant. This is very helpful because Radiant is anti-barrier, so this gives us anti-barrier capabilities without having to run a sidearm or a pulse rifle. As this build is good in lots of different activities, I'm not going to give you a complete rundown on what mods you should be running, but do know that Ashes to Assets and Bolstering Detonation both work incredibly well with this build, allowing us to gain super energy on grenade kills and class ability energy whenever we cause damage with a grenade, whether or not it kills. I'm also running Firepower so that our grenade final blows create orbs of power, which is just going to feed into the rest of everything else I'm running. For example, Stasis Weapon Surges for boss damage, or something like Emergency Reinforcement if you're running GMs and you need something to help you stay alive a little bit more. Like I said, this build can be run in lots of different activities. In a GM, it's going to be used to be able to get lots of grenade kills, which are going to heal you, and it's going to be able to give you orbs of power if you're running firepower like I am. It's also going to help you reload your bump in the night, or whatever demolitionist rocket that you might want to run alongside it to be able to help you kill champions faster. And when you get to the boss room, it'll be good for just a normal damage rotation with this build. If you are running this build in a raid or some other activity where you're fighting a boss, hitting the boss with the Osteo Striga first to poison it, and then swapping to bump in the night, shooting the bump, throwing your grenade, shooting the bump, throwing your grenade, back and forth. If you need to, you can always reload bump in the night manually or throw more grenades if you're running out of rocket ammo, but that's up to you. The one thing to keep in mind is that any freeze or slow from stasis will override the poison damage from Osteo Striga, much as it does with suspend and other similar effects. This means that if you have someone running chill clip, or if you yourself are running chill clip, it'll unproc the damage from Osteo Striga, and you're not going to be getting those damage ticks in order to make Starfire Protocol give you more grenade energy. This is not necessarily the best thing for you, so you'll probably want to confer with your teammates before you and them pick your builds. Obviously for this, I am running Osteo Striga, but you could easily run a Witherhoard if you want to. Witherhoard and Osteo Striga do stack with each other, but multiple Osteo Strigas or multiple Witherhoards do not stack with each other. So if you have two Osteos both poisoning a target, only one of them is going to count. Same with the Witherhoard. If you have two Witherhoards, only one of them will count, unless you do something that a lot of people know how you can do with Wither Horde, where you have one person shoot the Wither Horde onto the enemy's body, and the other one you shoot on the ground. At that point, the two will stack, but any additional onto either the body or the ground won't do anything extra. For this reason, it's normally best to run a maximum of 3 Starfire Protocol Warlocks if you're doing something like a raid. However, if you do have more than that, and more than that can still be very effective, you'll probably just want to run something like an auto rifle or an SMG as your primary weapon to swap to get off some damage. Something like a fusion rifle could also work really well to get a burst of damage, to get some grenade energy back, to be able to swap back over to your rocket afterwards. You could also run something like an Anarchy if you don't want to run a rocket launcher, and this would also do a great job of proccing Starfire Protocol to give you more grenades back. The one thing you do need to keep in mind when using this build is that Starfire Protocol will only give you grenade energy when you are empowered with that weapon damage. So you need to either be in a empowering rift or a well in order to get grenade energy back from any weapon damage that you deal. This means that in high difficulty activities like a GM or a master raid or something like that, you might choose instead to run a healing rift over an empowering rift, which is going to decrease the efficacy of the build, but it's going to give you a little bit more survivability, and when you pop a well, you'll still be able to use Starfire. You could also use someone else's empowering rift if you have multiple warlocks running this build. As you can see, this build is incredibly strong, especially for boss damage, but also just for general activities, as the fusion nades do a lot of damage, and as long as you have something like an Osteo Striga, or a Wither Horde, or an Anarchy proccing the damage for it, you can keep throwing out grenades almost indefinitely. And this is going to make it so that you can do a lot of damage for a very effective ammo cost. This is why people run it with a Demolitionist Bump in the Night, or some other rocket like that, is because you can have the damage over time giving you grenade energy back, and whenever you shoot your rocket, you'll be able to immediately reload it and shoot another rocket. This is incredibly effective with Osteo Striga because you don't need to keep swapping back to it like you do with Wither Horde to keep proccing it as long as no one unprocs that damage by freezing the enemy. But if you run it with Wither Horde instead, it'll still function incredibly well. The last thing to keep in mind for GMs is that because this build is so strong at killing large groups of enemies with your grenades, especially if you are in a empowering rift or a well, you shouldn't be afraid to pop your well whenever. Especially since if you are in a well, you can just keep throwing grenades, and Ashes to Assets is going to be very effective at getting you energy back for your super. So it's going to make it so that you can keep popping supers, maybe, not every time one's down, but pretty close to that. You get the energy back incredibly quickly, and you just keep moving on. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions about this build, or have any suggestions for other builds, please leave them down in the comments below. With that being said, I've been Zadix Squared. Thanks for watching, everyone.